We are coming towards the end of the conference now, so I'd like to welcome to the stage, I'll give her an introduction first, Professor Bethan Greener. She has the challenging but important task of providing a summary of today. Can you imagine how busy she's been? Her brain must be exploding. As well as being the head of the School of People, Environment and Planning at Massey University, Professor Bethan Greener's research focuses on how states and others seek to provide security and what this means for world order. This has resulted in books on international policing, military roles in peace and stability operations, and an edited collection on the New Zealand Army. She was also a speaker earlier today, as some of you may have heard, on resetting New Zealand foreign policy. This makes her an ideal person to provide a summary of the day's proceedings. Please welcome Professor Bethan Greener.
Thank you. I'll have mentioned to some of you last night and earlier today that in 2023 I took great glee in laughing at David Capey running from room to room, not realising that what he was doing was preparing for this role. I wondered why he was kind of darting all over the place, and he had to go up and down stairs. I just had to go next door. So I just wanted to say a huge congratulations to Hamish and the team. This is no small event, and it's been fantastic. The whole day has been innovating, and it's not easy to do that over the course of a whole day. So certainly kudos to you. Also thank you to the speakers and to the NZIIA in general. I also really, just before I sum up, so I better be quick, looking at the timer, just wanted to say a huge welcome and congratulations and thank you to students in the room. So just to, I guess, acknowledge you, and also to acknowledge that we all started there. You know, a number of years ago, I was also sitting in the audience, so feel free to be the gopher that does the running around and does the notes in a few years' time, more like 20 years' time. And yeah, it's fabulous to see you here. Your views, I hope today you found that they were seen as both valid and valued. So we really appreciate the engagement. Okay, so in 2023, David Capey's summing up, such an erudite man, why on earth do I have to step into his shoes? He summed up the 2023 conference, and he used a number of C words, no rude words, but he used complex, complicated, challenging, competitive, contested, talked about climate change, China-US frictions, and also spoke of the return of conflict in Europe with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. He also referred to the combination of these things in the words of another speaker on the day, Edward Carr, from The Economist, who spoke about these being polycrises. That is, that these were events or dynamics or developments that exacerbated each other, and they deepened each other as well. David also spoke about the words of then Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Chris Seed, saying that it looked as if we were shifting from rules to power, from economics to security, and from efficiency to resilience. But David also reminded us we were not helpless nor hapless, and he ended his summary of the day by hoping for a happier world in 2025. Okay, we've added to the list of his complex and contested. We know, today we've mentioned India, Pakistan, Gaza, Israel, Iran. We've been warned by the Ukrainian ambassador that there's a likely mounting offensive. We've also seen in that particular conflict not only innovation in terms of, he spoke about a 12-week turnaround in terms of new technologies coming online, which are then adapted to, but we've also seen the return of old weapons. We've seen the return of cluster munitions, of landmines. So these are difficult times indeed, and we've heard a lot today about the rules of the game, both security and economics being changed, potentially to expect bad behaviour. And we can add increasingly complicated climate change and social dynamics. That survey, I very much commend Asia New Zealand for continuing that longitudinal work, where 53% of those surveyed placed fake or disinformation as their number one concern and security concern. But I also think we've got room for hope to creep in. So when Jason Young this morning and a number of other people picked up on this, spoke about needing to understand the risk of war, we can try and ensure that people understand those risks. We can work on social cohesion to forge identity, and from that identity to better understand our interests and how we engage in our partnerships. We can do this through education. It was mentioned that there are high levels of trust in business relations and in communities. We can look to Mātauranga Māori or Māori values. It's clear also that it's possible that some of the apathy that we have faced in New Zealand before with regards to security and defence issues in particular, that may be shifting, that we might be seeing more interest. So we can have these conversations. As Ash Noah pointed out this morning, in our under-30s group that was surveyed in the Asia New Zealand survey, there's increasing confidence in their knowledge of Asia, which augurs well. Even the apparent struggles for influence in the Pacific might be able to assist in delivering what Pacific leaders and the panellists today called for, which is a greater understanding and listening to those of the Pacific rather than speaking for those of the Pacific. We also, in discussing things such as the cognitive dissonance of both rating countries as both friends and threats, maybe we're learning to operate more in the grey rather than needing the black and white, because the world is much more complicated than we sometimes like to pretend or reassure ourselves. At the very worst, I quite enjoyed the discussion on economics, where New Zealand was described as harmless enough to get away with things. So perhaps if that's the worst, then we can do, we're not in such a bad space. We also had Phil Twyford reminding us that we have been a credible voice for certain causes that we believe in, notably nuclear-free zone and particularly the pursuit of that in the South Pacific. Our economic panellists talked about being adaptable and flexible and that that's possible. We can do it again. So there's still room for manoeuvre. Even the realists in the room have acknowledged that, with the Minister speaking to the importance of diplomacy and the role for small states. And we need to remind ourselves that most states in the world are small states. We often forget that fact. Lise Howard too spoke of the rise of imperialism as a possible norm. But we can counter that. As she suggested, we can offer contesting norms. And we're seeing some of this. So we saw Emily Mosley's presentation where she was speaking about there is resistance in Congress to some of the challenges that are happening in the US presidential system. And can I note, change can happen. This is perhaps quite an astonishing feat, but I have gotten to, I'm not going to say what age, but to my age of attending these sorts of conferences. And this was the very first time I have seen a WANL. Now, some of you might have heard of a MANL before, which is an all-male panel, but we had an all-woman panel. And this is the first time I've seen this in an international relations conference that's not a gender conference. So there's change. Change is happening. We're seeing changes in demography. We're seeing changes in institutional structures. And that climate change panel, which was comprised of women, urged us to conceive of tackling climate change as the ultimate group project, taking us back to high school and university, where we all need to work together and collaborate. Some may pull together more than others, do more work more than others, but the end result is still what we all want to have happen. That we need to refocus our conceptualizations of the issues as less of a problem and more what we can do to solve them, and to take things one bite at a time. So my takeaways from this are that we are in difficult times, but that there is space for manoeuvre. That increasingly we see the relationship, and this has been spoken about a lot today, that the domestic does matter to the international. And from that, I believe also one of the themes that's come out today is the importance of the treaty and underpinning international affairs. Coming to peace with our identity first, and then letting values guide the direction, focusing on the positive, seeking out group projects, keeping the doors open, and partnering when we understand also, though, the uniqueness of what we can offer to the world. So through things like education and understanding, I think that we've still got a great deal of room for a Aotearoa New Zealand voice. So on that note, I want to close by drawing attention to this year's theme for Matariki. So in 2025, we're celebrating the idea of Matariki Mapuanga. So Matariki refers to the Pleiades in our understanding in the West, and Puanga, which is regal. These are two different stars that rise together at the start of the new year. And although we tend to emphasise in the traditional holiday that we tend to emphasise matariki of those two, we will also acknowledge that different iwi celebrate puanga instead as the main marker of the new year. So as such, this year's notion of matariki mā puanga acknowledges the different sets of knowledge that are in the world and the validity of those. And it's about inclusion and embracing diversity, different ways of knowing and being together. So those are themes, I think, which can resonate with a number of the conversations we've had today. So I'm not going to end, as David did, with predictions for 2 years' time, but I would leave you with the note that there is always something hopeful and that we have agency and power still to make change. Thank you.
That was very impressive. To summarise the entire day like that, very impressive indeed. I would now like to introduce, to give the closing remarks today, Dr. Hamish McDougall, Executive Director of the New Zealand Institute of International Affairs, Whare Tā Wahi a Mahi Aotearoa. Hamish.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings, everybody, including dignitaries, Your Excellencies, Heads of Mission, our patron, the Right Honourable Sir Anand Sachinand, NZIIA members and all other guests. It's been quite a day. This has been over a year in the making. There's 340 delegates here. There's 40 speakers today, 13 or so separate conference sessions, and I don't want to tell you how many cups of coffee have been consumed in the making of this conference, but it's been a lot. And I've got, I think, about 7 minutes now to sort of pass on some concluding remarks and a vote of thanks to the many terrific people that have helped to make this happen. Firstly, can I acknowledge the tangata whenua, Te Aotearoa, for their impressive welcome to us this morning. As Professor Greener has just told us, this is the week of Matariki. It's a very special time, a time of transition, gathering communities, acknowledging the past and planning for the future. And we'll strive to do all of that at the conference today. And as well as being celestial, Matariki, of course, has something of a maritime element. And we often like to describe this conference as a flagship for our institute. And if I can talk a little bit about that seafaring theme for a moment, I'll explain a bit about how the sort of flotilla of NZIIA ships, crafts, waka, sailing, following on behind the conference, is making some good headway despite some headwinds. And I think this bodes really well for the Institute's future and its mission of fostering expert discussion and understanding of international affairs as they relate to New Zealand. Because today's event is actually one of more than 100 that the Institute puts on every year. And it's a source of pride that every week there are, on average, at least two events happening all the way around the country, including at our regional branch network, nearly all of which are represented here today. And this, of course, comes in addition to our research, our publications, our communications, our engagement. And we're also winning contracts to deliver projects and sponsorship to sort of grow and diversify our revenue. And this all adds up to a really substantial body of work. And we all know that money is tight out there, and I hope you'll agree that for the relatively small amounts invested in our institute, we can provide a really substantial return to our funders, to the international affairs community, and to the broader New Zealand public. But I guess all of that counts for nothing if the work that we do doesn't enhance the economic, social and environmental well-being and security of Aotearoa New Zealand. And to that end, we've been pursuing a strategy of delivering more sophisticated knowledge, communicated in more effective ways to help decision makers make better decisions. That includes people working in government, either New Zealand governments or other governments, to NGOs, to academia, to think tanks, and so forth. And it's one of the really pleasing things for me about this conference to see those many of those decision makers here, people at the peak of their careers, attending because they see significant value in the conference and what we deliver beyond the conference. And it's something that we're really keen to grow for several reasons. Firstly, as we've heard so much of today, the world is destabilised, fragmented, and undergoing rapid change. And it sounds quite trite, but New Zealanders need to know, as much as ever, what is happening in international affairs. And because of that, I would argue it's important to keep investing in organisations such as ours, but also universities, including, might I add, the social sciences and humanities, and in civil society. At a time when the funding pool is shrinking, New Zealand needs to be broadening and deepening its international affairs expertise if it wants to give its decision makers and its broader public the right tools to understand and act and respond to what is happening in the outside world. And so at the Institute, we aim to do this in ways that complement and collaborate with other organisations and add value that that other organisations can't. And with this in mind, and hopefully you can see evidence of this in today's program, we're pursuing content that links international politics or geopolitics with themes such as trade and economics, with technology, with security, with climate, and with society. And also covering regions as well, particularly some regions that aren't particularly well covered by the international affairs community, like the Pacific session today, which built on some work that we've done last year and hopefully is a pointer for further work. There's a Māori whakatauki or proverb which runs mā te pā te maiti e whakatupu, which is roughly equivalent to the English saying of it takes a village to raise a child. And I actually think it takes an international community to deliver a conference such as this. And with that in mind, there's a few thank yous I'd like to run through. Firstly, to the NZIIA board, including our national chair, Dr. James Kemba, who have provided many hours of patient advice and wisdom to me, as well as keeping the governance of the Institute on track. Can also thank my colleague Yvonne Palmer very much for holding the fort on much of the Institute's business as usual as we're organising the conference. Special thanks to the team at ICON Event Management, particularly Jamie Beatson and Marlene Goodhart for the excellent, dedicated and diligent efforts to deliver the conference. If you're looking for large-scale event managers, then I would very much commend them to you. They've got much more patience for last-minute requests for changes than I ever will, and great attention to detail. I'd also like to thank our sponsors. These are straitened times. We appreciate the support all the more. So first and foremost, can I thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade as the gold sponsor of the conference, but also the ongoing support of the Institute in myriad ways, while also respecting our independence and freedom of action. Can I also thank the Asia New Zealand Foundation, the EU delegation to New Zealand, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, for their generous sponsorship of individual sessions in today's conference. Starboard Maritime Intelligence was an exhibition sponsor, and we're very grateful for their contribution. NZIIA has been operating for 91 years, and throughout it's been part of our kaupapa, our mode of operation to bring world-class international expertise from overseas to present to New Zealand audiences. And I'm very pleased to continue that tradition today. But we're only able to do that with the support of several organisations who help to bring in experts. And these include Fulbright New Zealand, New Zealand China Council, Australian High Commission, Observer Research Foundation, and the Australian Institute of International Affairs. Many thanks to all those organisations. One of the fantastic aspects, I hope you'll agree, is the number of students and young professionals here today. And it's another one of our long-standing endeavours to foster the next generation of international affairs experts. And they've made a fantastic contribution to the conference. And to that end, I want to particularly thank Te Hira Nawaka Victoria University of Wellington, who supported close to 40 student members of their Wellington International Leadership program to attend. And Vic also supports our institute in plenty of other ways, not least in providing office and event space here in Wellington, so in Auckland actually. So our sincere thanks to them. MFAT also sponsored some Manaaki scholars, arranged for some Manaaki scholars to attend, and some other students, secondary schools, and also the Asia New Zealand Foundation for enabling several of their young leaders network. And last but not least, can I thank all the speakers because firstly, Dr. Sarah Bradley did a fantastic job as MC. Many of you will know Sarah from her television and radio roles, but she's actually just finished a PhD in international relations from the University of Auckland and deserves some congratulations for that, but which looks at the independence movements in New Caledonia. And if you're interested in that area, I'd very much encourage you to look that up. But we had 40 speakers here today in total, and all were excellent. As a rule of thumb, we try not to invite speakers who presented at the previous conference back to speak, which is not to say that we didn't have some fantastic speakers then, but it ensures freshness and diversity of perspectives. And I'm pleased to say there are only two double-ups from our last conference. One was me, and I don't count, but the other was Professor Bethan Greener, and I think you can see from the quality of Beth's summation why we invited her back to speak today, and thank you very much to her. So can I conclude by giving heartfelt thanks to all speakers, all sponsors, all the event staff, all of NZIIA's board, branches, delegates. Thanks a million. We very much hope you remain involved in the Institute into the future as we encourage understanding of international affairs. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Well, that concludes today's event. I hear that the Chardonnay is chilling and the Shiraz is opened and airing outside, so that's really good. I just want to do a couple of housekeeping things. Most importantly, please do tag us in any social media posts, hashtag NZIIA 2025. So hashtag NZIIA 2025. We'd love you to tag us in those posts. We're also going to be in touch via email with a short survey, and we'd love if you could take that survey for us. But right now, it's time to relax, do some more networking, and have some drinks, and as we like to say in New Zealand, and some nibbles out there in the foyer. Have a great evening.